Right, Fujifilm have announced a bunch of different products, and the one we're going to look at in this video, which I've had a chance to take for a proper spin, is the new X-T50. Now, this is, I think, a really cool camera to add to the X lineup of cameras. It could be compared to the X-T30 II, or you could compare it to the X-T5. It certainly shares a lot in common with both of those cameras in a lot of ways, because it's that kind of small, lightweight form factor, still looks great, but with a lot of the internals, and certainly a very similar base of internals to the X-T5. So you're getting a bit like the X-T30 II when it came out, a really nice, powerful system that's able to deliver a lot for you, but with a smaller, lighter form factor. And of course, there are a few sacrifices that have to be made to be able to get it into that smaller, lighter body, but that does mean that it suits certain people better. I also think, having used this for just solidly for hours, this would be probably up there as one of the best travel cameras for me. This would just be unbelievable for that kind of thing, or just going out and about, my everyday kind of stuff, going on a hike. This is the camera I would want to take with me. Let's get into it. So of course, like I say, there are some big similarities here between this and the X-T5, which means we've got the 5th generation X-Trans sensor. We've got the 5th generation processor as well. That means this has got the 40.2 megapixel sensor, just like the X-T5, which gives you so much resolution to play with. Now, I shot on the new XF16 to 50mm lens, but I also used the 150 to 600. With 40 megapixels to play around with, you can crop in even further. It just gives you that opportunity. If you are shooting wildlife or something far away, you can still get more reach out of your shots. You've got enough detail there to crop, and the image quality is stunning. I'm not surprised, because it's beautiful on the X-T5, and it absolutely is lovely here. The colors are fantastic, and just the detail, the level of detail in the shots is so nice. The autofocus is exactly the same system as in the X-T5, which means you've got things like subject detection, you've got the tracking. I use this predominantly for wildlife. That works really well. I mean, it just works really, really well, and you love to see it. I mean, in a small camera like this, where maybe you would do a little bit of everything, a little bit of all kinds of photography, you love to see a great autofocus system. Again, not particularly surprising. It's great in the X-T5 as well, but it's nice to see it here. Now, there are some differences, right? Because there have to be. First of all, it is smaller. It is lighter as well, which is great for certain things. It does mean there are a couple of sacrifices. So it's not weather sealed, whereas on the X-T5, obviously you've got weather sealing there. So that's one of the kind of trade-offs you get for it being smaller and lighter. It does also mean there is a little bit less when it comes to how many shots you're going to get on one battery charge. And that's understandable as well. Now, I must say, the kind of amount that is estimated here is 390 shots. I exceeded that for sure. And the battery was maybe half depleted when I finished with it, and I was really going for it. So I think there's always a little bit more room than that. It depends on the conditions as well, but it's something to be aware of. You know, there are going to be differences between this and the X-T5 for sure. But something which is really nice to see in the X-T50 is the image stabilization system. So this is up to 7 stops of IBIS in camera, which is really impressive considering that this is smaller and lighter, and it is noticeable when you're shooting. This is a really handy thing to have, considering you might use this for photo, for video. Probably, I would imagine at least, the majority of the time this would be handheld. It's the kind of system you would just take around with you handheld. So I think having that image stabilization is key. Now, 7 stops is similar to the X-T5. And actually, while I think this is probably predominantly going to be a photography-based camera, I think most people will use this for photography first, it does have some really decent video specs as well. So 6.2K 30p, 4K up to 60p. You've also got a 4K 30p high quality mode. The video looks really, really good as well. You can shoot 422 10-bit internally, but you can also output via HDMI 6.2K 30p in RAW. So there's a lot of video kind of potential with this camera. Again, not overly surprising. We see a lot of that in the X-T5 as well. So that makes sense. And cameras now tend to be hybrid cameras through and through. And that certainly feels the case here. But again, it just gives a lot of versatility for what you want to shoot. If you want to take this traveling, you can shoot all your photos, you can shoot your video. If you want to take this out and about with you, you've got all of that flexibility. And if you want to dabble in all kinds of different genres, well, you may as well just add video to that list. Now, one of the things I love the most about this camera, which I think is genuinely really, really nice, is the addition of a new film simulation dial. This replaces the drive dial, so top left of the camera. You still got the overall look to the camera, right? Classic look, very analog kind of feel, which is great. I mean, I love all the dials on this. It's such a lovely experience to shoot with. It also just looks, especially in silver. Oh, it looks so, so good. But I love this new film simulation dial because you've got it right there. Not only is it super easy to use, super convenient, but it also constantly reminded me to actually think a little bit about that, right? That's part of what makes Fujifilm so fantastic, is the film simulations. I think it's a great way to shoot. It can be tempting to forget about it and think maybe I'll just do it in the edit, but it's such a lovely way to add some style, add some flair, add a certain look, right? It's just a really fun way, and that's important. That is important, especially in a camera like this, where maybe you're not doing so much professional stuff, maybe you're doing your own photography. I think it's really important to have that fun aspect in your photography. Now, on this dial, you've got the most commonly used film simulation modes, and then there's room for 3 favorites as well that you can pop on there. I just think that's great. Is it a shame not to have a drive dial? Yes, a little bit. I mean, I guess that is going to be missed, but I think for this camera, I think it makes probably more sense to have the film simulation dial over the drive dial. I think for what this camera is going to be used for, it just makes more sense. And actually, we also see a new film simulation. So Reala Ace has been added in, which is great to see. You always love to see a new one. It's always fun to play around with these as well. Now, like I say, the actual design of this camera, it retains that classic look, the kind of dials, the buttons, very analog kind of look and feel to it. They look great. I mean, Fujifilm cameras look so nice. I love this. It's in silver and black. I love the silver. I always love the silver when it comes to Fujifilm cameras, and that's no different here. Immediately, I was drawn to that. If you're used to Fujifilm cameras, you'll absolutely be used to this straight away. There are some small differences. Actually, the buttons are slightly bigger, which is actually really nice. It makes it feel a bit more ergonomic. The screen is a little bit flattened to the camera. Whether you would notice that or not, I don't know, but it is quite nice. It makes it a little bit more flush. And of course, there's one UHS 2 SD card slot. Again, that makes perfect sense for a camera like this. The X-T50 is going to have your 2 SD card slots. A camera like this makes sense that it has 1. I honestly think that this is such a fun camera. If you're doing your own photography, if you're doing travel, if you're out and about, if you want an everyday camera, you want a weekend camera, if you're a professional, you want maybe a second camera, this is so perfect for all those uses. You could do more than that with this camera. I just think for those purposes, you've got the X-T5, right? That makes sense to jump up to the X-T5 if you want to start dabbling in more professional stuff or even semi-pro stuff. But I think this camera, it ticks so many boxes that sit in that fun category of photography and video as well. And I just think that's so important. It can be really easy to get kind of carried away with the pro specs of cameras and all these crazy level stuff. But actually, sometimes it is just about having a good time with it. And I think that actually plays a massive role in getting better photos and getting out with the camera. And I think that's exactly what this camera does. You can check out the full spec, everything you want to know, by heading over to parkcameras.com. There'll be a link in this post so you can go and see the camera for yourself, all of the spec, everything you want to know, all the fun stuff. Don't forget to like and subscribe as well. There's new content all the time, reviews, tutorials, everything. It's all happening all the time. I will see you in the next video. But until then, as always, thanks for watching.